My wife publicly humiliated me at our baby shower by saying, "It's not even yours." I stood up, smiling, and said, "Exactly why I invited the real father." He just walked in. The room went silent as her ex walked through the door, holding DNA test results. My name is Miles, and I never thought I'd be the kind of man to end up in a story like this. I lived a quiet, predictable life in Columbus, Ohio. I had a stable job, a decent house, a beautiful wife, and what I thought was a future full of love, trust, and eventually, a family. I work as a logistics regional manager for a mid-sized company that handles distribution for several retail chains across the Midwest. Nothing flashy. It's spreadsheets, meetings, planning routes, troubleshooting, and managing people. I'm not the kind of guy who draws attention in a room. I'm the type who listens more than he talks, who prefers a good book and a glass of bourbon over a party. That's why when I met Talia, it felt like lightning in a bottle. She was vibrant, full of energy, full of ideas, always talking about something about law, art, politics, family, her dreams. She was a paralegal at a firm downtown. I met her at a trivia night some colleagues dragged me to. She stood out immediately, not just because she was beautiful, but because she seemed alive in a way I wasn't. I think I fell in love with her before the night ended. We started dating. It moved fast. Within a few months, she was staying over more than she wasn't. A year later, we moved in together. 2 years after that, we got married in a small ceremony at Franklin Park Conservatory. It rained that day, but neither of us cared. We were happy, or I thought we were. Looking back, I realize I ignored the little signs. The way she always kept certain parts of herself guarded. The way she deflected when I asked about her past, especially about Jeremy, her ex. The way she sometimes looked distant when I talked about kids, as if the idea scared her more than it thrilled her. We tried for a baby for a long time. Years. When nothing happened, we got tested. I had low motility. Her eggs weren't ideal. It was a lot. But we pushed through. IVF was BR Tau. Physically, emotionally, financially. But we wanted it, or I thought we did. When the pregnancy test came back positive, I cried. Really cried. Not just tears, but those deep, full-body sobs that come from a place of relief and disbelief. I thought, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. And it did. Just not in the way I hoped. Talia seemed happy too. She was glowing, and not just in that pregnancy way people talk about. She was affectionate, attentive, even more involved in planning our future than she'd ever been. She bought books, decorated the nursery, made Pinterest boards, picked out names. I felt like we were finally building something real. We planned a baby shower for early spring. It was held at a small event space in German Village. Nothing extravagant, but cozy and intimate. Brick walls, string lights, soft music playing in the background. Cupcakes shaped like little baby bottles. Our families came. Friends. Co-workers. Her best friend Mira helped organize most of it. I was nervous but excited. I'd never been the center of attention like that before. We played games, opened gifts, and laughed at embarrassing stories. People told us how lucky we were, how strong we were as a couple, how perfect we'd be as parents. Then came the speeches. It started lighthearted. A toast from her mom. A few words from my brother Julian. I got up to say something short, just a thank you to everyone for being there, and a few words about how much this meant to us. Then I handed the mic to Talia. She stood there, looking radiant in a pale blue dress that hugged her bump just right. She smiled, looked around the room, then looked straight at me. And she said, "This baby's not even yours." The silence hit like a slap. You know those moments where the room just breaks? Where sound disappears, and everything sharpens, and you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears. That was it. People didn't know whether to laugh or gasp. A few chuckled, thinking maybe it was a joke. I didn't, because I already knew. I took a breath. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I held my expression steady, and I said, exactly why I invited the real father. He just walked in. And then, on cue, Jeremy stepped through the door, holding an envelope. Her ex, the man she used to call a mistake. Tattoos, messy hair, faded jeans, and in his hand, a sealed DNA test. He walked straight to me, handed me the envelope, and nodded. No words. None were needed. I opened it. The proof was there. Not a match. Not mine. No one spoke. It was like time stopped. Talia's face went blank. Not a shock. Not guilt. Just blank. Like she couldn't compute what had just happened. Her mother cried out. Her father stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor and stormed out without looking back. Mira froze, a napkin still in her hand, mid-fold. My brother just stared at me like I was someone he'd never met. I walked out. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't make a scene. I walked out the front door, down the sidewalk, and around the corner until I reached my car. I sat in the driver's seat for almost an hour before I started the engine. And when I did, I didn't drive home. I checked into a Marriott near the airport and spent the night staring at the ceiling. Talia called. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text. We need to talk. No, we didn't. I already had all the information I needed. The next morning, I called a lawyer. A week later, divorce papers were filed. The fallout was messy. People took sides. Some believed I was cruel for exposing her like that. Others said I handled it with too much restraint. Her friends were divided. My family was livid. Mira emailed me a few days after, apologizing. She said she knew but didn't know how to tell me. That Talia had told her she was going to come clean eventually. Eventually. That word still makes my stomach turn. Talia tried to reach out again. She said she panicked. That it was a mistake. That Jeremy didn't mean anything. That she was scared I wouldn't stay if I knew. That she hoped I'd fall in love with the baby and not care about biology. But it wasn't just a mistake. It was a lie. A lie that was carefully maintained, right up until she decided the best way to reveal it was in front of everyone we knew and loved. As if that would soften the blow. I found out later that Jeremy didn't know she was pregnant until she was nearly 5 months along. She reached out to him, told him it might be his. He pushed for a test. She resisted. Eventually, he got one anyway. When it came back positive, he told her he wanted to be involved. She panicked. That's when she came up with the idea of coming clean in a way that would somehow, in her mind, be empowering. Like taking back control. Like honesty on her terms would make her noble. She underestimated me. Because by the time she said it, I already knew. Jeremy had reached out to me. He said he didn't want to cause drama, but that I deserved the truth. He showed me the results. Told me everything. I thanked him. Then I asked him to show up at the shower. He agreed. Said he wanted to do the right thing. Maybe for the baby. Maybe just to set things straight. And now here we are. I live alone in a modest place in Worthington. A small house, close to work. Clean. Quiet. The nursery is gone. Donated most of it. Couldn't bear to look at the little socks, the crib we built together, the books we read aloud late at night, trying to imagine a future that would never exist. I don't talk to Talia anymore. Everything goes through the lawyers. She kept the house. She's raising the baby with help from her parents. I hear Jeremy's involved now. Good for him. The kid didn't ask for any of this. I'm still trying to figure out who I am now. Not a husband. Not a father. Just Miles. It's lonely, but it's honest. And after everything, that's all I want now. Truth. Even when it hurts. Even when it breaks you. The days after the baby shower felt like a fog. Not the kind of fog that sits gently over a field in the morning, but the kind that chokes highways and blinds you from seeing what's right in front of you. I went through the motions, woke up, got dressed, showed up to work, but I wasn't really there. People noticed. My assistant, Claire, asked if I was okay. I told her I was going through a personal matter. She didn't press. I was grateful for that. Word spread, of course. My family knew. Her family knew. Columbus isn't a small town, but in the pockets we lived in, friends from law firms, clients, old classmates, neighbors, it felt like news traveled fast. I got texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were sympathetic. Some just wanted the tea. I ignored most of them. What haunted me most wasn't just the betrayal, or the humiliation, or the loss of a future. It was the reality that I'd been living beside someone for years and never really saw them. I replayed everything. Conversations, moments, subtle shifts in mood. I wondered when the line had been crossed. Was it a one-time mistake that spiraled, or was I always just a placeholder? One night, about a week later, I came home from work, opened the fridge, and realized I hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. There was still a Tupperware of leftovers she'd made the week before. I threw it in the trash and stood over the sink, staring out the window like something might happen if I waited long enough. Eventually, I started going on long walks at night. Worthington's pretty quiet in the evenings, older houses, trimmed lawns, a couple people walking dogs or pushing strollers. I walked with no destination. I just needed to move. Sometimes I passed by parks, saw dads pushing kids on swings, couples laughing on benches. It gutted me every time. I started seeing a therapist named Irene. She was recommended by my lawyer's assistant, who said she helped another client through a similar kind of betrayal. Irene was soft-spoken but didn't pull punches. First thing she said was, "You were grieving a life you thought you had, and a future you were promised." That line stuck with me. She helped me untangle the mess in my head. Not just about Talia, but about myself. About how much I'd ignored for the sake of keeping peace. About how often I'd made myself small just to make a relationship work. I started seeing the pattern. It wasn't just her. I'd done it before. With friends. With coworkers. Always deferring. Always avoiding conflict. Always absorbing pain quietly. This time, Irene said, you didn't stay silent. You gave her the truth in front of everyone. I didn't feel heroic. I felt destroyed. But something about her saying that, it gave me a strange sense of permission to stop carrying the guilt I didn't even realize I had. Then came the day I ran into her. It was 2 months after the baby shower. I was at Kroger, pushing a cart with 2 frozen dinners and a bottle of Advil. She was in the baby aisle, holding a small pack of diapers and some kind of baby lotion. She looked tired, paler than usual. Her hair was tied up in a lazy bun. Her eyes met mine. For a second, we just stood there. Then she stepped forward. "Miles," she said, her voice low. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just stared. I'm sorry, she added quickly. I mean it. I know nothing I say can undo what I did. But why the baby shower? I asked. My voice cracked even though I didn't want it to. Why did you wait until then to say it? She opened her mouth, then shut it. She looked down at the diapers in her hand like they might offer an answer. I thought, maybe if I said it in front of everyone, it would feel real. Like ripping off a band-aid. Like I could stop living with the weight of the lie. I didn't expect you to know. I didn't expect Jeremy to be there. I was trying to control the moment. I didn't know how else to say it. So you humiliated me instead. She didn't deny it. She nodded slowly. I deserve everything that happened. And more, she whispered. The silence that followed felt louder than her apology. I loved you, I said, almost more to myself than to her. I know. I pushed my cart past her. She didn't follow. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the blank space on the wall where we used to hang a photo from our wedding. I'd taken it down, but the little holes in the drywall were still there. I couldn't bring myself to patch them. It felt like admitting everything had ended, and I wasn't ready to do that yet not completely. The dreams were the worst part. I kept having them. Some were memories, perfect recreations of ordinary days, brunches, movie nights, folding laundry while she hummed old Motown songs. Others were strangers. I'd dream I was holding the baby, watching it grow, only to wake up with a tightness in my chest so sharp I'd gasp for air. In the meantime, Jeremy texted me once. A short message. I didn't know until she told me. I'm sorry you had to find out like that. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I never replied. I didn't hate him. He didn't know me anything. He was just a variable in a life equation I never wanted to solve. What could we possibly say to each other that wouldn't leave us both feeling worse? Instead, I focused on work, buried myself in it, took extra shifts, volunteered to lead a cross-state warehouse integration. It kept my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. But every so often, something would slip through the cracks. A lull in conversation. A smell from a nearby bakery that reminded me of Saturday mornings with her. A song that came on while I was fueling up the car. And the grief would come flooding back. Not just for her, but for the man I used to be before I learned how easily a life can be upended. Summer came, and with it, a strange sort of quiet. The chaos had faded, at least on the outside. But internally, I was still walking through the ruins. Some mornings I'd wake up and, for a few seconds, forget it ever happened. Then I'd roll over to an empty side of the bed, see the faint stretch marks in the carpet from where her dresser used to be, and reality would pour back in like cold water. I stopped going on social media. Too many people with newborns, too many couples celebrating anniversaries, too many pictures of families in matching pajamas or out at the lake. I wasn't bitter exactly, just tired, jealous, maybe, of the simplicity, of the stability, of the lives that didn't explode during a baby shower. My mom came to visit one weekend in July. She hadn't said much after everything went down, just quiet, steady support in the form of texts and check-ins. But when she showed up that day, carrying a grocery bag full of Tupperware and 2 bottles of wine, I could tell she wasn't here to tiptoe around me anymore. We sat on the back patio, drinking white wine out of mismatched coffee mugs because I still hadn't unpacked my glassware. The air was thick, cicadas droning in the trees behind the fence. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "You always wanted a family." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to say more. "I think you still will. Just not the one you thought." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But everything still felt too raw, too broken. Like whatever hope I had was still under construction, and the blueprint had been lost somewhere in the demolition. She stayed the weekend. Cleaned my kitchen even though I told her not to. Made a lasagna that filled the house with the kind of warmth I hadn't felt in months. We didn't talk about Talia again. We didn't need to. That same week, I ran into Mira, Talia's best friend, at a farmer's market near the Scioto River. She was with her boyfriend, carrying a basket of zucchini and basil, looking startled when she saw me. I nodded politely, tried to keep walking, but she stepped in front of me. "Miles," she said, almost breathless. "Please, just can I talk to you for a minute?" I hesitated, then nodded. Her boyfriend took the basket and stepped away. "I should have told you," she said. I knew. I didn't know all of it, but I knew enough. I was just scared to get involved. Scared to lose her. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't just apologizing for the secret. She was carrying her own kind of guilt. "I appreciate you saying that," I said quietly. "She's not okay," Mira said, almost in a whisper. "She pretends, but I can tell. She's overwhelmed. With the baby, with her parents, with Jeremy. She's drowning." I didn't respond. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part just felt sad. "I'm not telling you this because I want you to fix it," she added quickly. "I know that's not your job anymore. I just thought you should know." I thanked her. We said goodbye. I didn't ask about the baby. I didn't want to know. Not yet. The next few weeks were uneventful. I kept my head down. Took long walks again. Started cooking more, something I used to do when life was simpler. I bought a record player, something I'd always talked about but never did, and started building a small collection. Otis Redding, Bill Withers, Carole King music that felt honest. Music that didn't lie. One night, I was in my living room, a record spinning low in the background, when I got a message from an old friend Aaron, a guy I went to college with. We hadn't talked in years. His message said, "Heard what happened. Sorry, man. If you ever want to get out of town for a bit, we've got a cabin in Hocking Hills. Keys are yours." I didn't respond right away, but something about the idea of disappearing for a while or stepping away from the place where it all fell apart started to grow in my mind. So I took a few days off work, packed light, drove southeast. The cabin was simple, wood everywhere, a deck that overlooked trees so dense they swallowed sound. No Wi-Fi, no TV, just a fireplace, a record player, coincidence, and a shelf full of paperbacks. I didn't do much, just breathed, let myself be still, let the grief settle in ways I hadn't allowed it to before. I wrote in a journal I found in one of the drawers. Just thoughts, fragments, lists of things I missed, things I didn't. I wrote Talia's name once, then scratched it out. I thought about the baby, about what it would look like, who it might become, whether, someday, it would know what happened, whether it would ask about the man who almost became its father. I thought about forgiveness, about whether it was something I wanted, something I could give, to her, to myself. On my last day at the cabin, I woke up to a light rain. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and watched it fall through the trees. It was the first time in a long time that I didn't feel heavy. Not empty either. Just quieter inside. When I drove back home, I took the long way, passed through little towns I hadn't seen in years. Ate at a diner in Lancaster where the waitress called everyone honey, and the pancakes tasted like childhood. Listened to the radio instead of a playlist. Let the road remind me that there was still a world beyond what I'd lost. When I got home, I didn't check my phone for a while. Just unpacked, made dinner, and sat with the stillness. Later that night, there was a voicemail from Julian. "Hey man," he said, "I just wanted to check in. No pressure to call back. I'm proud of you. I know that probably doesn't mean much right now, but I am. Call me when you feel up to it." I sat on the floor for a long time after that, phone in hand, heart heavier than I wanted to admit. It's strange, isn't it? How people can love you quietly, without fanfare, and you only really feel it when your world stops spinning. I didn't call him back that night, but I would. Soon. Because for the first time in a long time, I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of everything. Just the end of something. Fall came quickly in Columbus that year. The kind where the leaves don't just change color, they ignite. Rich reds, deep oranges, gold so bright it almost glows in the morning light. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I started to feel like myself again. A different self. One that was no longer hiding behind the shell of a broken man. I went back to work full time, started running in the mornings, made peace with the silence in my house. I even joined a book club, the kind where middle-aged men drink bourbon and talk more about life than the actual books. It helped, and I began to think clearly about what had happened, not just emotionally, but logistically. Because as the fog lifted, something started bothering me. Money. More specifically, how the IVF was paid for. Talia and I had put most of it on my credit. The bulk of the procedures and medications had gone through my accounts. She always promised we'd balance it out later. "We're building a family," she used to say. "What's yours is mine." But now what was mine was debt. And what was hers? Well, hers was gone. I dug through old emails, bank statements, and appointment invoices. All of it was in my name. Even the final round, the one that took. And in the eyes of the state, we were still legally married when the child was conceived, even if I wasn't the father. That's when I called my lawyer again. "Can I sue her?" I asked flatly. He paused, then said, "For fraud? Possibly. Especially if you can prove she knowingly deceived you into financial obligations under false pretenses." That kicked off months of paperwork, quiet investigations, and one tally awkward deposition where Talia sat across from me with her attorney and refused to meet my eyes. But I didn't want her to go to jail. I didn't want headlines or scandal. I wanted something else, something more poetic. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be held accountable in the exact way she'd tried to avoid. We settled out of court. She agreed to pay back every cent of the IVF plus damages for emotional distress and reputational harm. Her attorney called it an aggressive demand. I called it fair. It wasn't about the money. I didn't need it. What I needed was to walk away from that chapter knowing I didn't just survive, I won. And I did. But that wasn't the end. About 6 months later, I got an invitation to a holiday fundraiser. It was for the firm Talia used to work for. Mira was now a junior partner, and she reached out personally, saying she hoped I'd come. "It's mostly donors and staff. Very low-key," she said. "But it would mean a lot." I almost said no. But curiosity got the better of me. I walked in wearing a dark navy suit I hadn't worn since our engagement photos. People smiled. Some recognized me. Some whispered. I didn't care. I'd become good at standing tall. I found Mira near the bar. She gave me a hug, smiled with something like relief, and said, "She's here." I already knew. Talia was across the room, standing near a table with name tags. She was thinner than I remembered, more tired around the eyes. She saw me, hesitated, then turned away. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. Later, as people were mingling, there was a short segment where staff were invited to share something meaningful about the year. Mira got up to speak. She talked about resilience, about owning our mistakes, about rebuilding with honesty. And then she said, "There's someone here tonight who taught me what accountability looks like, not in anger, but in quiet strength. I won't name him. He doesn't need me to, but I'm grateful for him." People clapped. I stood still, my hands in my pockets. Talia never looked up. I left early. As I walked to my car, I passed a bench we once sat on during a lunch break years ago, back when we still believed we were the right people for each other. I paused, then kept walking. That night, I got home, made myself a cup of tea, and sat on the porch, wrapped in an old hoodie. No music, no noise, just the cool air and the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. I thought about the arc of it all, the rise, the fall, the long crawl back to solid ground. I thought about the baby, a child I would never raise, but who had been a part of my life's turning point. And I thought about Talia, not with hate, not even with sorrow, just with understanding. She had tried to erase the truth with charm and control, but in the end, the truth stood taller than her. And so did I.